The money is there. It's just a question of trying to knock back the special interests and the big corporations and billionaires who don't want to pay any taxes.
Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse running for re-election and railing against Wall Street fat cats, the Supreme Court, and what he sees as threats to Social Security.
Holding the powerful accountable from Washington, D.C. to right here in southern New England. This is 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti.
There's been reckless and irresponsible and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies about what's going on. It's undermining confidence in the people in Florida. An incredible rescue and recovery work that has been undertaken. Literally, there are thousands of fellow Americans who are putting their lives at stake and putting on the line to do the dangerous work that needs to be done now. And it's harmful to those who most need the help. Quite frankly, these lies are un-American.
All right, that's the president speaking just before Hurricane Milton made landfall in Florida and slamming former President Donald Trump for spreading what he calls dangerous disinformation. Good morning, everybody. I'm Gene Valicenti in studio with Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who wants another term in November. Senator, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure, Gene.
You are the Dean of Green now in the Senate, Mr. Climate Change, and let's talk about that hurricane. Are you convinced that that hurricane was made worse because of what you see as climate change?
100%. And if you go to what the modelers who look at this at NOAA, at the scientists, and at the Florida weather broadcasters are all saying, they recognize that the excess heat in the Gulf of Mexico, setting records, powers up those hurricanes and makes them stronger and more rain-filled when they hit the shore. So I don't even think that's debatable at this point.
Well, every hurricane is an individual hurricane, and some are worse than others. So can you provide us with just the link, why you think that every hurricane now coming out of the Gulf is climate-related? Or
because
should I rephrase that, is stronger because of climate change?
Because of the surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico and the power that adds to hurricanes.
Right.
A little bit like if you're taking performance-enhancing drugs, you're going to hit a home run every once in a while, but you're going to hit a lot more with the performance-enhancing drugs. And unfortunately, the hot waters that climate change has caused are a hurricane-enhancing effect.
All right, well, it has ramifications. Insurance, we know that the insurance industry is changing Florida.
Yeah.
And the whole Rhode Islanders retire, move to Florida mantra is going to be upended, I think. What do you think about that?
I think it is. I think the Florida insurance market is in a state of real crisis. I'm looking at that very closely from my budget committee chairmanship as well as just as a senator, because Florida, I think, is the preview of coming attractions for Rhode Island. And if coastal properties are going to suffer from coastal storms, hurricanes, sea level rise, and flooding in Florida, it's only a matter of time before those things hit home for Rhode Island homeowners and taxpayers.
Can you reverse that at this point? I mean, erosion's a big deal in all of our shoreline communities. I was just out in Little Compton. It's an issue in the local election there.
Yeah. No, you're dealing with, the old saw about it takes a long time to turn around the tanker ship. But we've got to start turning around the tanker ship now, because it is going to get nothing but worse until we significantly reduce the carbon emissions that are driving this mess.
All right, the president was railing against Donald Trump. Donald Trump he's railing against the $750 initial offer. Now, the $750 is initially FEMA makes contact with you. You fill out an application. If you pass it, we give you $750. Not a lot of money, Senator. Also, Homeland Security.
Just to get you through the first days, basically.
Yeah, you can come back for thousands more at some point, but it's the $750.
It's the opening bid. It's the here's what you need for what you need today.
Well, it's not a lot of money. I mean, $750, that could be what you have in your refrigerator or your freezer. And if you have no house to go back to, you could see some people complaining it's not a lot of money. Homeland Security Mayorkas secretary did say that he is running out of money to fund FEMA on the storm size. On the storm side, there is another pot of money. FEMA does provide shelter for migrants. And Democrats have been saying you can't confuse the two. Donald Trump is saying, look at all the money we're spending on the migrants. That's where we're broke with the storm side. Does he have any merit to that?
No, the two accounts are completely separate and are funded separately. We do, I think, have a problem with running out of disaster funding. President Biden has called for us to come back and make sure that FEMA has adequate disaster funding. The flood insurance program has to be looked at for adequate disaster funding. There's a whole suite of disaster relief that may need support. At the moment, Speaker Johnson has refused to bring the House back. So we'll see where that lands. But clearly we are running out of disaster money, and that needs to be replenished.
But we have to do a little fact checking. So the 750 is the initial offer, if you qualify, by the way, because I was listening to a mayor in North Carolina. He said, my own daughter only qualified for 300. And now you're going to hear the critics say, wow, 300 for her, 750 if you get the whole thing, and look what we're giving the migrants, and look at the billions we're sending to Ukraine. You've heard this. How do we square the two?
You fill up the emergency accounts and make sure that the funding is there. If the emergency programs need to be improved, and I think with the continuing pressure of climate change, with the wildfires out west, the coastal flooding along the coasts, the storms and droughts in the Midwest, what we see here in Rhode Island, which is these rain bursts that flood out our rivers, all of those things are telling us that regular insurance programs, including emergency and disaster programs, are going to need a refit for the more dangerous decade ahead.
Well, that makes sense. If you are convinced that the hurricanes are getting worse, so we'll have to put more money toward disaster relief. That makes sense. But what about the critics? It's just a buzz. I'm only getting 750 even on day one, and the migrants are getting more than that when they get off the bus, and billions for Ukraine. Zelensky just came in again with the Ukrainian Brinks truck. So that's square those two.
They're separate accounts, is all I can say. And it's our job to make sure that the emergency funding is adequate and to review those programs regularly, and particularly now to face up to the fact that climate change is making many disasters much more likely and much worse when they come. And that's been a difficult battle to have, because it's been very difficult for Republicans in Congress to admit that climate change is even real, while President Trump is saying, hey, this is just a big hoax.
Before we go to break, what I'm saying, Senator, though, is some people feel we're doing more for non-Americans than Americans in need. That the migrants are getting more, getting off the bus, than somebody in North Carolina just lost their house. That's what I'm getting at.
I think that's mostly what I would call fake news.
Not true.
Not true.
And you're convinced of that as well?
Yeah, I think there's a lot more for American citizens than there is for immigrants coming in. In fact, almost everything is way better for American citizens than for immigrants coming in, other than the emergency relief that they get at the border, the housing at the border, while they're sheltered, detained, or turned back. But that's not stuff that regular Americans want. They don't want to be detained at the border.
It's more than 750 at the border for everything you just outlined. But again, you're saying don't confuse the two.
Don't confuse the two.
Two separate pots of money. All right, Senator, stay with us. When we come back, we're going to get to President Biden. I've asked you about President Biden's cognitive health the last two times you were here. I'm going to ask you again.
Sure.
Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
It always spurs growth when you let people keep more of their own money. They spend it. I'm a loud, strong voice, and I'm a hard worker for the peoples of my district.
Senator, that's your Republican challenger, Representative Pat Morgan, who said we'd all be better off with her than you. You want to just, I don't know, maybe you want to tamp down or fire back against Pat Morgan? She is. You talk a lot about being persistent. She is persistent.
I'm happy to talk about the issues. And the issue in that little clip was people being able to keep more money and more money in their pockets. The very best way we can do that is the COVID-proven child tax credit that put thousands and thousands of dollars into the pockets of families where an individual makes less than $200,000 or the family makes less than $400,000 at about $3,000 per child. If we can do that, which has been a Democratic priority, that will really create both an economic boost for Rhode Island generally, an easing of the labor force tightness because people can work when they've got extra money to pay for child care, and money in pockets for the grocery aisles.
You know, we got a disappointing inflation report out just yesterday. The last inflation report before the election. Prices remain high across the board. Wouldn't we just add to inflation if we give away more free money? Wasn't that what Larry Summers said was the initial mistake? We gave out too much free money in COVID.
Yeah, I don't think that was the case. I think the inflation was primarily driven by massive disruption in what is now a global economy, so that People who were making goods suddenly didn't have a market, so they'd close down the factory or the factory line. When it started back up again, it wasn't there. The shipping wasn't there. Costs ballooned. Things like lumber that had been just stopped during COVID. There was a huge price surge until that market stabilized again. And you're still seeing those costs in grocery aisles from imported goods and from goods that are coming out of ravaged agricultural areas where drought and flooding are making agriculture more and more challenging. So it's going to continue to be a problem, but I think the way to address it is in part to make sure that average American families do better under the tax code, and that all the benefits, like the Trump tax benefits, aren't going to big corporations and billionaires.
Well, COVID started under Trump. He was handling it, and he gave away free money as well. A lot of child tax credit stuff went out under him. But President Biden accelerated it, and Larry Summers, who used to be at Harvard, the economic genius for Obama, has said, yeah, we overheated the economy. That's to blame. Would you give Larry a little bit?
He doesn't see it the way I see it. He and I don't agree on everything. I do think that Powell has done a good job moderating the economy, so that now we're seeing inflation come down and we're seeing interest rates able to come down. And the famous soft landing that everybody hoped for appears to be actually happening because of his work. And the backdrop to all of this is that the United States of America is the #1 country in the world at restoring its economy after COVID. #1. So that's not a bad place to be. Obviously, there's more work ahead, but I'd rather be #1 than number 10 or 20.
Well, I guess, listen, that's a tough message to take, given that chicken is high and the rest of the goods that we all need every day in the supermarket remain high. The report just showed that.
That absolutely needs to be solved, but you're going to solve it better when you're the #1 economy coming out of the pandemic than you would be if you were economy number 20 or number 30. So we have, I think, a good direction, but the focus on costs for families is really important. That's why it's the #1 priority for Vice President Harris's campaign. That's why the child tax credit is so important, because it's the most efficient way to put money into people's pockets to meet those costs.
Senator, over the past few visits with us, I've asked you about the president's cognitive ability, particularly given the polls that people didn't think was up to the job. And now look what happened. Now he was swapped out with Kamala. This is the last time you were on with me in April when I asked you this specific question. Here's your answer.
And see what we're getting at. President likes to tell stories, some of them proven to be not true at some times, and sometimes he's slow. More than 70% of Americans think he's not up to the job for another 4 years. You say what, Senator?
Well, in all of my dealings with him, he has been fully up to the job.
Senator, I've asked all 4 members of the delegation, do you bear any responsibility for sort of covering up for the president's abilities? You swapped him out in the end because he wasn't up to the job. And every time I asked you, you said, oh, no, he's great.
Let's be fair to the man.
Yeah.
He wasn't swapped out. He made the decision. This was a very important personal decision made by him. And I think he deserves credit for making that decision. And the idea that he was just moved around like a checker, I don't think is fair to him. I do think that when he went on that debate stage that night, people who had confidence in his abilities were shocked at his performance that night. And then I think he took stock of his situation and then made the decision that he did, which I think was the right decision. But the reason that debate performance was so shocking, was so horrifying, is because it came on us unexpectedly. I don't think anybody thought that he was going to go onto that debate stage and perform like that. I had never seen him that way in any exposure I've ever had to him. So Senator, that was what was stunning about it.
Maybe it surprised you, but I don't think it surprised 70% of the American people who felt he wasn't up to the job for more than a year and a half. And we asked members of Congress, and it was to say, oh, he's great when I see him, but he wasn't great when we saw him. And by the way, this notion that he wasn't swapped out, you mean Nancy Pelosi, Schumer, and Barack Obama didn't knock on his door and say, the jig's up, you got to go? Well, he was holding on to the fence. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving.
He's the
Senator, give us a little bit.
President of the United States, still his choice. Clearly, they made their views known, but it was his choice.
And that's the first that's the first draft of history as you would write it.
Yeah, I think it truly was his choice.
Yeah.
He was getting a lot of information from his campaign, from the public, from his White House staff, from members of Congress. You know pretty well where I stood on that. I was urging that The campaign had not been run very well already, that Vice President Harris would be a better candidate, and that everybody's discretion about where the campaign was headed shouldn't be taken as an endorsement. It was actually just a very polite reflection of our affection and respect for the guy to give him the chance to make the right decision. And
So when I
where
was
stood.
asking you about his ability to serve, about cognitive impairment, and you were saying, no, he's great when I see him, you were really being honest with us. You weren't just pulling one for the party and helping the guy in the chair.
The question that we were facing after the debate was, can he run a winning campaign? Not, is he cognitively impaired? Can he run a winning campaign? And after that, I think there was grave doubt about his ability to run a winning campaign, particularly when the Republicans cranked up the issue of his capability so much that you started to see those public numbers. But you'll notice that since then, that has all tailed off. Now that he's not the candidate, he's going about his business and managing things, and there is no huge storm of criticism about his cognitive abilities. Indeed, if anything, it's President Trump whose present cognitive abilities are now the ones in question.
All's fair in love and war. By the way, I've got new poll numbers just in from Emerson. Very, very tight race coming up in November. Senator, stay with us. Our final segment coming up. Welcome back. Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse seeking another term with us for one more segment. Senator, I'm looking at the polls from Emerson just out. 7 swing states. Trump's ahead in 4, tied in the rest. She's got him in 1. Wow, what's going on here, Senator? This could go either way?
It could go either way. I think one of the things about the swing states is the polling swings a lot too, including at the same time, different polls come with very different results. So I think we have to be a little bit careful about reading too much into the polls. But one conclusion you can draw is that this is going to be a very close race, and turnout could be decisive.
And she is your candidate, we know that.
Without a doubt.
And an issue for the Democrats is Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court did away with that. Now, you want to talk about the Supreme Court? That's your area, too. You've carved out 2 niches now, climate and the Supreme Court. Senator, what's wrong with this? In Rhode Island, we think differently than they do in the Deep South or certain other Midwest states. We want what we want. We codified a woman's right to an abortion here. Why not let those states have what they want? Isn't that the fundamental way a union of 50 states is set up? Rhode Island does what it wants, and another state, Arkansas, does what it wants.
The fundamental way to decide this is for the family involved to decide what it wants. This should be a family decision with the family and the medical advisors, and that's where it should end. The Rhode Island legislature shouldn't be involved in the OBGYN suite. The Arizona legislature shouldn't be involved in the OBGYN suite. It just isn't the place for state legislators. Where this should be decided is by women with their families and their doctors.
So you don't see it as we think this way in Rhode Island, and the rest of you should also think this way, given that your philosophy, the makeup of the population, the religious background of a particular state, they feel differently, Senator.
I brought in as a witness a woman who was carrying twins, and one of her twins was not going to survive the pregnancy, and that was likely to take the life of the other twin and perhaps her life as well. She was from Texas. She could not get care. So she had to sneak out of Texas and fly to Colorado to have the non-viable twin aborted so that her viable twin, Henry, now alive and well, could survive the ordeal, and so could she. That isn't a question of Texas being right or Colorado being right. That's a question of that woman should not have had the Texas legislature in her treatment room when she was facing that condition and having that emergency in her pregnancy.
Donald Trump says he is not for a national ban on abortion. I sent it back to the states. That's where it belongs. By the way, he also says there are 3 exceptions that he allows for abortion. He said Ronald Reagan felt the same way.
There are a lot of things not to believe Donald Trump on, and I'd put this near the top of the list of things not to believe Donald Trump on.
If he says the Democrats want to pack the court, expand it because they want their way, should I believe him on that?
I think
we have more than 9 justices.
I have a bill that would require term limits, and the term limits would move the retired justices onto senior status, the way we do in all other federal courts. I guess they're still justices, but it would remain an appellate court of 9. So, we could bandy words about whether that expands the court or not. But I have a term limits bill and I have a judicial ethics bill because of the way they're misbehaving on the court nonstop.
Oh, I know. I see your videos. You tweet out a lot of videos on their alleged misbehavior.
Not alleged. It's actual misbehavior.
I know you're going after Justice Thomas. You're railing into him for the trips and the gifts and everything else, and the entire court for what you see as the influence of dark money. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds on that because they can go to your Twitter account and see everything you want to say about it.
Yeah, I think that this court has been, I think the word you'd use is captured. In the same way that railroad barons in the old days would capture the railroad commission, so it gave them the railroad rates they wanted. I think a bunch of creepy billionaires spent over $500 million to capture the Supreme Court so that it would do what they want, and we're seeing that scenario play out right now, and that's not the way a court should behave, and it's particularly not the way a court should behave when members of the court are taking multi-$100,000 secret gifts from billionaires who have an interest in that influence operation.
I know your website and it's full of things on the Supreme Court. Anybody wants to know more about Senator Whitehouse?
And people are coming
around.
You
go there. All right. Senator, I just want to go back to climate change for a second. You know, just yesterday we learned that the Providence City Council is proposing a ban on any new gas stations. They want to be the first city in the country. The governor rejected that out of hand today, and so is Mayor Smiley. In fact, Mayor Smiley told me over my dead body. At what point does an interest in climate become ridiculous? You're going to ban new gas stations.
I don't know if that was an interesting climate or if that was a question of zoning and pollution.
It's part of their climate change. No more gas stations.
So
we're going to move to electric.
I can't answer that. What I can say is that climate change has been underrepresented as a risk to our economy. We're seeing the leading edge of that economic risk happening right now in the insurance markets in Florida and in Texas and in California in the wildfire areas. I think that Rhode Islanders need to really do everything we can to lean in, including leaning into offshore wind, to make sure that we're providing our best clean energy future for Rhode Islanders as part of a larger clean energy strategy that gets out of the way of what is worse to come if we don't deal with the climate crisis.
Donald Trump says he'll pull the plug on offshore wind day one. So harms the birds.
Yeah.
Your TV will shut off if it stops spinning.
Yeah, he makes up a lot of stuff. I'll give him credit for that. He makes up a lot of stuff.
All right, listen, let's go to the international efforts. As you and I speak, there's bombs going off in Lebanon, and we're waiting on Israel's response to Iran following the bombing just about a week and a half ago. Senator, can you be supportive of Israel's right to defend itself, but critical of Netanyahu? How do you square those two?
I am. That's exactly my position. I'm a staunch pro-Israel person. I think the U.S.-Israel relationship is essential. They're an important ally, and they represent democratic values in that area in a way that other countries around them don't. Netanyahu, I think, has been a very unfortunate influence in recent months. Just take 1 second. There is a peace framework that has been developed between Israel, the Palestinians, and the Sunni Arab nations, Qatar, UAE, Saudi, Egypt, Jordan, and Iran wants to blow that up. Our goal needs to be to continue to push that peace framework and land it. That is the ultimate goal. And Netanyahu's trying to disturb that goal, I think, with excess military violence.
I guess you'd like a ceasefire, you'd like the hostages out, you'd like a swap out in leadership, but you stand by Israel's right to defend itself and as Israel's steadfast ally. Did I
well
sum
summarized.
It up? All right. We only got about 30 seconds left. As for Ukraine, he comes in with always a request for money. He gets billions. You know, Senator, the music's playing. We'll have to hold it there. We'll answer the Ukraine answer at a later date. You come on the radio with me. But thanks for coming in today.
Support Ukraine.
All right. Thank you, Senator. You got the last word. That's 10 News Conference, your #1 longest running political show in Southern New England. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you on the news next week.